Good morning. It is Advent Together Day 10, and today we are talking about the habit of having integrity with our words. So we're looking at the ways that Jesus taught us to live into this life so that we might have peace and joy. And as we're doing that, we're looking through Matthew 5, 6, and 7, and just pulling out some of these commands that Jesus gave. Yesterday, we talked about heart integrity, what it means to realize that what happens inside is as important as what happens outside, that there's no difference to our Creator between our motivation, our action, our words, our thoughts, what happens inside as we're thinking about others and experiencing them, and then what happens on the outside. And the reality is that what we're experiencing on the inside when it comes to how we love other people does eventually come out, whether or not you think that's true. When we harbor negative thoughts, when we harbor resentment, anger, that comes out to people in one way or another, either later or sooner. It might come out to the person that you're actually mad at. It might come out to the guy who's driving in front of you in traffic, but it comes out. And so I think the principle there that Jesus is teaching us is that having heart integrity, the ability to check in with ourselves, to know our motivations, is a very important part of becoming a person who lives with peace and joy. And then the next thing that Jesus talks about is this idea of the way that we talk. So we're talking about what our hearts look like. And then in verse 33, chapter 5, we're talking about oaths. And he says, do what you say you're going to do, and don't add anything to it. He says, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. So we talked about heart integrity, and now we're talking about word integrity, how we live a life where the words that we say are the words that we mean. And I cannot stress enough how important this is. Now, many times when we talk about being people who commit to what we commit to, who say no when we need to say no, who say yes when we want to say yes, being people like that, oftentimes we immediately have excuses for why we're not able to do that. We're like, I'm going to disappoint people, or people push me, or I don't feel in control of the things that I do. I get that. But can I just tell you something true? You are 100% responsible for your inner life. You are ridiculously responsible for your inner life. Once you are an adult, once you are no longer living, if you're living in a toxic situation, once you're an adult, you're responsible for the life that you are living. You don't owe anyone anything except for your Savior God. No one comes first other than Jesus. And when that's true, it means that your priorities are around what Jesus says your priorities can be, and who he says that you can be is who you can actually be. And one of the things that Jesus says we can be are people who are true with our words, that actually we mean what we say. So to have word integrity, the first thing that you have to do is you've got to slow down long enough to make sure that you are telling the truth. So if you get, for instance, let's go with a positive example. You get an invitation to a party and you immediately say, yeah, I can't wait to be there. But you've never checked in with your heart. You've never checked in with your schedule. You've never checked in with your spouse or your relationships. Then there's a good chance that what your yes was not an actual yes. And one of the things that is the easiest trick in the book is just not to say yes and no to things immediately, to actually say, you know what, I'm going to have to think about that and I'm going to get back to you. Doing that gives you the buffer that you need if you're not a person who's really good with checking in on your heart, if you need that buffer. And let me tell you something. You don't have to have a reason to say no. You can just say it. You can say, that's not going to work for me. Thank you so much for the invitation. Not going to be able to make it. You don't have to give excuses. Now ask yourself, because I know you're starting to be like, no, I have to. Ask yourself why you feel like you have to give excuses. Why you have to do things that you don't want to do or that you know are outside of your boundaries. If you start asking yourself those questions, you're going to be digging in to the deep work of realizing, wow, I am just a slave to approval. Like, I need people's approval. I need to know that people like me. I'm a slave to not disappointing people. Well, if you're a slave to those things, then you're not a slave to righteousness, which is what it says in Romans. Like, if you're living that way, you can't live with Jesus as your priority. And I know that this is tough to hear, but it would be wrong of me to tell you anything other than the reality that you are responsible for your inner life. Now, you might be saying, well, Nicole, if you knew what was going on in my inner life, you'd be like, ugh. Well, I get that. I've been the person before. like full of anger, full of resentment, full of unforgiveness. That's where Jesus wants to do a work in your life to heal you and to set you free, to actually take your heart of stone and make it a heart of flesh, as we've talked about. But you've got to acknowledge it. You've got to be honest about it first and stop thinking that it's other people who are making you who you are, and start engaging with, okay, I've got this thing. I had this bad thing happen to me, or this injustice happen to me. Guess what? That's Jesus's territory. That's what he's all about. He's all about setting us free from those things so that we can actually see that I'm a person who needs a savior. I need to be rescued. Therefore, this person who harmed me or hurt me, they're also a person in need of a savior. They're also in need of rescue, but I'm not their savior and I'm not their rescuer. I can have compassion for them. God can actually give me love for someone, but I don't have to keep living with them breaking my boundaries. I can be like, this is the only kind of relationship we can have. So I'm getting off track. That's like a longer topic, but the reality is you are responsible for your yeses and nos. If you're thinking, well, what about people who violate my boundaries? What about people who ridicule me, or people who push me or are aggressive toward me or manipulate me? I get that. Those people are not healthy, and healthy people don't respond to healthy boundaries. The only way to deal with a situation like that is to distance yourself from it, in the sense of distancing from giving them all the best of who you are. You can still be in relationship with a person, but you lose the expectation of who they can be for you. You've got to let go of what you want an unhealthy person to be for you that they can't be. That's the only way to be set free, to give yourself the space to actually engage with healthy relationships and move toward healthy relationships. So let your yes be yes, let your no be no. Prepare yourself to have your boundaries violated. Prepare for that to happen, for people to push back on you. Get yourself ready to say, I'm responsible for what I choose to do or not do. And if this person's violating my boundaries, what I probably need is distance, because that's not a healthy person. Now, if that happens to you, you also have to know and be aware of the way that you cross other people's boundaries. One of the ways that this happens is when we don't accept other people's no, or we let people give us a no, but we hold on to disappointment and resentment that they can't be more for us. Sometimes people give us a no with our words. A lot of times people give us a no with their actions. If there's people in your life who are saying with their actions, I can't really love you, I can't really care for you, I can't really affirm you or value you, then that's not a person that you want to give that to. You've got to get yourself out of that space where you're beholden to that person in your inner world. You may still be in relationship with them, but letting people off the hook for what they can't be for you is what forgiveness is. And it's not until we let people off that hook that we can reattach ourselves to Jesus and ask him, really ask him to meet your needs. And then new people come into your life, new circumstances, new relationships, you begin to heal. And in doing so, you're able to be a person who has heart integrity and word integrity. Okay, that's what we have for today. I'll see you guys tomorrow.